It is true I got locked in the bathroom. I was at home by myself, and why I locked the door to this day I don't know. I went to unlock the door and the lock was broke. So I spent a day in the bathroom. Fortunately, plenty of water, there's a faucet. You can snap in the tub if you lay just right, you know. So the story gets out because I missed teaching school that day. We had a basketball game that night. So one of my best friends was the funeral home director, a guy named Greer. So I'm at the bank and Glenn's pulling through and he yells out, he says, "Pastor, tell him about being locked in the bathroom." "Thanks, Glenn." And the lady behind me, I swear, turns around and says, "That happened to you too?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Yeah, I went to lock the door and locked myself in, and it was horrible." Maybe it never happened to you. My advice, if you're home by yourself, don't worry about locking the door. Today is Brady's 10th birthday. It's one of the reasons we're here. And if you want to know what John was like as a child, watch Brady. Every once in a while, John will say, "Can you believe what Brady did?" "Yep." Now, Noah is a lot like my dad. The more Noah grows, I see my dad. And with Lucy, I have a history degree. Just look at the queens of England. We get in the door and, Brady, "Grandpa, you're here." Noah, "Grandpa, you're here." Lucy, "Hi, I'm busy." So, John, I did have the opportunity to coach John. And one of my favorite, someone wanted to hear some John stories. And so you're going to get this. This is my favorite. We're at a basketball tournament at Thomas and Jefferson Academy. And so the team, we get in, we unload the bus, I'm getting ready, and one of the players says, "Coach, I don't want to play tonight." I said, "Andrew, play." Now the truth is we have to win by 30 at least for Andrew to play, but you never know. So I said, "Andrew, no." He said, "No, I can't play." I said, "Are you sick?" And he says, "No, I'm not." I said, "Andrew, truth now." "Well, somebody brought 2 left shoes to the game." "I want to know." John. John, in his infinite wisdom, brought 2 left shoes to the game. That was the high point of the night because we played horrible. It was the only time that I was shaking the coach's hands afterwards, and he says to me, "Man, those were lousy officials, weren't they?" I know there was something lousy here tonight, but so I'm walking to the locker room. And my assistant coach is about 6'3", and he's saying, "Now, Coach, you're mad." I said, "Jake, shut up." And he starts to grab my arm before I go into the locker room. I said, "Jake, do you like that arm? Would you like to keep that arm?" And the captain of the team says, "John, the first words out of your dad's mouth, it's going to be about 2 left shoes." And I didn't disappoint, did I? When John got his call to ministry, it was a youth convention. So he gets back right as I'm leaving to go to church. We had a meeting that night, and I realized I had to go to Office Max to pick something up. And John says, "Dad, I got to speak to you right now." He said, "Tell you what, after church, I'll take you to eat anywhere you want to go, and we can talk whenever you want it." He said, "Dad, I want to talk now." I said, "I'm busy." He said, "As a member of your congregation, I demand to speak to my pastor." Now I'm thinking, if I hear about a water balloon fight, you are in trouble. You saved that one real good, son. But there is another side of John that I also see him break. When John was a senior, the team was having trouble gelling. So I went to John and said, "You know what? One of our better kids just can't play off the bench." If you've ever played sports, some guys can come off the bench, some can't. It's all about rhythm and timing. It has nothing to do with skill. I said, "John, what I want to do is let Luke start, bring you off the bench, because you've done that a lot through your career. And you know how to do it. And you'll get the same minutes because basically your rest time will not be in the game. It'll be the beginning of the game in the half." He said, "Okay." So I go to Luke. I said, "Luke, I'm going to start again." He says, "Who am I starting for?" "I'm starting. You're going to start for John." I said, "No, you can't make me start." Now I coached for 10 years. This is the only kid that did not want to start. I said, "Luke, maybe I'm not making myself clear. You're going to start, and I'm going to bring John off the benches. You can't make me do it. I'll quit before I start." I'm thinking, I'm missing something here. I said, Luke, what is it? He says, it's John's senior year. He's our best friend. He's the best encourager. If you do that to him, I'm not going to play. I said, okay, here's the deal. You go speak to John. If you feel the way you do right now, I won't make a change. But you come back. And so he talks to John, and he comes up to me. He says, all right, I don't want to start, but I will, because John wants me to. That's John. Yes, he doesn't know which shoes to bring. His mother's a little concerned he's holding his pants today. It was funny as he came in a minute to see us before he came back over. Trillo looks at me and says, you know you would make him change if he lived in your home. I'm not in my home. Anyway, well, John, you may make an appearance before I'm done today, or not. I don't know. We're going to talk about second wind today. Second wind. The Windy City. Does anybody know what the Windy City is? Chicago. Well, Chicago got its name Windy City not by what you might think. Now, if you've ever been to Chicago, the wind's pretty good there. It whips off Lake Michigan. You ever watch a game at Wrigley Field? If it's blowing in, you can't hardly hit the ball out. It's blowing the other way, you can't keep it in the stadium. But it actually got it from 1860's Republican political convention. That was the year that Abraham Lincoln was nominated, and as the Easterners came over for the convention, they were sick and tired of the Chicago people bragging. And as they dispensed from there, Chicago became known as the Windy City because they simply wouldn't shut up. I've lived in Illinois most of my life, and they're dead right about Chicago. But there's another wind I want to talk about. John, you can flip the slide anytime. Thank you. You don't know the fear that John is controlling part of my message is a fear I haven't had in years. This is Elijah. And Elijah has one of those moments that anybody in ministry would love. He goes to Mount Carmel. He basically challenges the prophets of Baal to a duel. It's kind of the OK Corral of the Old Testament. And he brings fire from heaven and gets rid of a lot of prophets of Baal, and then Jezebel threatens to kill him, and he runs away. Now, the only thing that Elijah now remembers, he doesn't remember the fact for 3 years he did incredible things. And on a day that really defines who God is in that time period, he proves that God is real. All he can hear in his mind is he ran. You know, a lot of times that's all we hear. So he runs. He eventually ends up in a cave. And we read this verse. God speaking to Elijah, he says, what are you doing here, Elijah? Now Elijah gives a really good answer. He says, and this is the Greer version of it. I fought the prophets of Baal, won, good day. Then I got scared, I ran, and now I am just as evil as all the forefathers before me. That's how Elijah saw him. Saw himself. That somehow, that mistake defined everything. Now, God sees it so much different. We see our mistakes from the light of how we failed. God views the mistakes through the lens of what we have done and how that mistake does not define us. I loved athletics all my life, but I couldn't play. I just had no skill. I'm short. I have no coordination. And so I never forget, I wanted to go out for basketball, and the head coach said, Steve, you'd be a perfect manager. I never forget that. He says, we don't want to get you hurt out here. And so I did that, and I was in high school, and I was manager of the baseball team, and I worked with another kid who was a senior, but he had to go away that day. We had a road game, so it was my job to pack all the stuff. Packed all the stuff, thought I double-checked everything. We get to Highland, Illinois, where we're playing that Saturday, and there are no baseballs for us to practice with. I forgot all the baseballs. Now, there's moments in your life, you know that little Snickers thing, you need a Snickers? I needed a box full that day. So Mr. Coach Dorsey kind of looks at me and shakes his head, and we found some balls because the JV team had came with us, and we stole some of theirs and borrowed with permission. And we win the game, but I really don't care about winning the game. I've made up my mind I'm quitting. Because how can you have someone work for you that cannot remember to bring the baseballs? So we get back to the school, coach's office. I'm waiting to speak to Mr. Dorsey after I put all the equipment back. But it seems like every player that day wants to speak to Coach. I think, can you guys just stop? So finally, there's no more. I walk in, I start to speak to Coach Dorsey, and Coach Knight walks in, who's the track coach. But he'd also been the basketball coach, and I worked for him during basketball season. I said, great, I get to embarrass myself in front of two guys. Now, to understand where the coaches are in my life, my father, till he found Christ, was a cruel man. He thought it would make me a better man. He was not intent to hurt, but he lived a tough life and he wanted to be tough. So these men were father figures. They spent great amounts of time with me. I loved them almost at that point in my life more than I did my dad. So for them to be disappointed in me was devastating. So I started to say, and as I said, Mr. Dorsey, I think I need to quit. I know you can't trust me anymore. And Coach Knight says, oh, well, if he's quitting, Coach, I want him. And Coach Dorsey, do you think a bag of baseballs is going to steal one of the best managers I ever had? You're crazy. So all of a sudden, they're fighting over me. I said, Coach, I did a dumb thing. He said, I bet you never do that dumb thing ever again. And I bet you that you will triple check anything, anywhere we travel, because I believe in you. Coach Dorsey did not see me for the guy who left the baseballs. He saw me as the guy that had worked for him all that time, and that one mistake did not change me. When Elijah did not see, God saw the man that took on the prophet of Baal. He saw the man who ran away, but he knew that the man in front of the prophets was the real man. And the others was simply a mistake. One of our mistakes we make is the Apostle Paul. Next slide there. See, we always think that God speaks to us the way he did the Apostle Paul. When you go to Bible college, everybody talks about their calling, and everybody, and I was sitting in a class one day where I just heard enough stupid. I'm blunt, I'm sorry. Some people have, I didn't teach John that either, I'm sorry. That's why he has holes in his pants today. But anyway, I said, guys, if we can't tell the difference between Paul and Elijah, we got a problem. Paul was a rebel. Paul was out to destroy the church, and on the road to Damascus, God said, enough is enough. Paul, here's what's going to happen today. You're going to convert, or I'm going to stop you. That's why as we talk about Elijah, God doesn't strike Elijah down. He doesn't blind him. He doesn't get in his face and say, you want to take me on? Take me on. No. Elijah is a man who made a mistake while serving the kingdom. Go to the next slide, John. It says that a great powerful wind tore the mountains apart and shattered the rocks before the Lord, but the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake came a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire came a gentle whisper. When Elijah heard it, he pulled his cloak over his face and went out and stood at the mouth of the cave. Go ahead and hit the next slide, John. Let's look at that last verse again. And after the fire came a gentle whisper. Elijah, I need to speak to you now. Now, if you love your children, when you do the greatest teaching, your voice goes down, not up. I remember John and Gary, I was on them one time, and they said, Dad, would you please yell? I said, why? I said, well, you're yelling now, but it would be a lot better if you just raised your voice. One, you're mad. This one, you're hurt. It's a gentle voice, but notice what he did. He didn't pull up his cloak when there was wind, and he didn't pull up when there was fire, and all that going on. It was when he heard the voice of God that was so powerful. Then he had to shield himself. God speaks to his children softly and gently. No, every once in a while, when we're a little rebellious, we might see the tone go up a little bit. You know, I'm surprised John did not tell you. Everywhere he goes, he says that I spanked him every Sunday. That's not true. There were Sundays I went other places to speak. I hate it when he lies like that. Now, when I would teach my boys the most, I just wanted to have a heart-to-heart conversation. God has heart-to-heart conversations with his children. We had lost a game one time. We played so well. And I was telling him how proud I was of it. And it threw a couple of them off because we lost by a couple points. And probably if we had done a couple things different, it might have changed the score. But I said, I'm proud of you. You did your best, and Elijah did his best that day. Truth was, Elijah was human, and the stress of the moment was just more than he could handle. Next word, slide, John. Then he asked, after all this, what are you doing here, Elijah? Second question, it's same in the Hebrew. There's no change of wording, but there is a change of instruction. Are you ready to leave, Elijah? Are you ready to do the next thing? Are you doing here to hide and quit? Are you here to move on? The quality of who you are in your faith is, do you quit when times get tough? Do you quit when you feel that disappointment? Elijah wasn't quitting that day. He thought God wanted him to quit. He was assuming that God wanted another man who was stronger and more able to take over. He'd quit on himself, but God did not quit on Elijah whatsoever. So God has a plan. Next slide, John. Here's the lessons, and the plan would be this. It ain't over till it's over, the great Yogi Berra told us. Your life ain't over till you're dead. It's never over. Life is about losses, defeats, mistakes, acts of stupidity. You're human. You're going to be stupid. You're going to make mistakes. And the greater things you attempt, the greater the mistakes you will make. The less you do, the less the mistakes. Attempt small things for God, you'll only make small mistakes. Attempt big things for God, and you'll make large mistakes. Not on purpose, but sometimes. It reminds me of the story of a boy who came from a Boy Scout meeting. And the focus that day was serving others. And one of the illustrations was that you need to help the elderly sometimes across the street. So he gets out, and right at the street corner, like a divine moment, is a woman with a cane. So he's going to help her across the street. Now, it's rather difficult because she's pulling and fighting him, but he just assumes that she just doesn't want help. So he finally gets her all the way across, and she takes that cane and smacks him right on the back. What did I do wrong? I missed my bus! Yes! She was waiting for her bus. He assumed you wanted to go across the street. It was a mistake. It was a pretty big mistake, but it was an innocent mistake. It ain't over till it's over. Don't let the mistake define you. Secondly, listen to the voice, not the storm. One of the things I noticed, I'm not a nature guy. I like concrete. I hate to say this. My wife's a nature person, but I'm not. I like cities. I like the noise. I just don't. My grandfather lived out of the country. He was a farmer. I had to spend 2 weeks a year there. I loved my grandfather. I hated the farm. When he told me that getting up at 6 in the morning, he was actually, getting up late, I figured this is not the life for me. And there's no such thing as country fresh air. I'm sorry. It's a smell that stays with you for a long time. You know what fertilizer is? Yes, explains it all. So I understand noise. In the storm, in the wind, in the fire, it was only the voice he had to hear. There's a unique thing about sheep. If you take 5 shepherds and you put all their sheep together, and the shepherd calls out to the sheep know the shepherd's voice, and they will instinctively go to the shepherd. If all 5 will speak simultaneously, all the sheep will find their shepherd. They know the voice. When you're in the storm, and sometimes the storm is how you feel about you. The storm isn't caused by other people, it's how you feel about you. Because Elijah's about how he felt about Elijah. You know what everybody else is saying? Wow, that Elijah guy is awesome! If there were, the Jerusalem Times, if one of those existed, it said, prophet eliminates Baal. But the storm is in him. You listen to the voice of God. And you know what that voice is. You know when it's God's voice. Why? It brings peace. It brings comfort. It brings joy. In the midst of the worst moments of your life, it is there. If I listen to the voice. Now, if I listen to the voice is going to move me where I need to go. Sometimes God's voice has to say, you know what, I got to fix this before we move on. And we may not like that part, but it's a voice that's instructing, not destructing. I was after a game, I'll never forget. It seemed like the best moments sometimes happen after a loss. So we'd gotten beat, and we were horrible that night. Matter of fact, I was so mad I didn't want to eat with my players, which was very rare. I thought if I see them again, I'll say something that one of us is going to regret. So this kid walks in. The kid had been an awesome basketball player. He says, Coach, I wish I could have played for you. And I'm thinking, if you knew how I felt right now, you wouldn't even want to speak to me. I said, really? He said, yeah, I'd see you get after your guys, but I always really loved your guys. I'd hear him talk about, yeah, Coach Greer can be tough, but he loves us. He said, my coach never loved me. I'm not even sure he liked me. I said, yeah, I get mad at him sometimes, and sometimes I really would like to take a basketball, never mind. But anyway, but I love it. Only reason I really stay on Facebook half the time is these guys, I watch their lives. That's how God is with you. He loves you. Next one, John. Answer the question. Elijah had to answer the question because God had a plan. See, there's this kid named Elisha that's on a farm right now that God needs to get in the game. And he knows the perfect teacher for Elisha is Elijah. But he has to know before he gives the plan out, are you going to stay with me? Are you going to quit? He's not going to tell him about Elisha till he answers the question. God asks you questions. You need to answer the question. Will you still hang in there? One of the things is that over the years, the number of guys that have quit ministry that I've known and I went to school with becomes a larger and larger list. I'm not talking about retirement. I'm talking about quitting. Why? Because ministry is rough. I told John once, it's a full contact sport. Because when you deal with people and you deal with people in tough times, sometimes people aren't very nice. They say things that aren't very nice. I know it's hard to believe someone like me, someone would ever say anything mean about it. It did happen. So one day I got an offer for a job. A friend of mine was living in Ashland, Tennessee, and he called me and he said, Steve, how'd you like to be a high school principal? He said, they want someone, it was Free Will Baptist School, they want someone who's not Free Will Baptist. I gave them your credentials. Oh, by the way, they'll let you coach their basketball team. By the way, they won state last year, in case you're interested. He said, they're going to give you a vehicle, and they're going to pay you about $15,000 more than you're making right now. I mean, it was a great offer. I said, well, I'll call you back, Randy. So I was talking to Trula. By the way, Katie, John, when you think your kids are asleep, they're spying on you. Because we thought they were asleep, so we talked about it. And Trula said, if you answer one question, you can call me back. Has God called you to be a principal or a pastor? There are times I hate my wife. Can I just say that? That was not the thing to ask. That was not on the list. I think, did you just hear everything? And I get Sundays off. You know what a 3-day weekend means to a pastor? Low attendance. That's all it means. He can't say that, I can. I'm the visitor. I said, did you hear? She said, yeah, I just want you to answer the question. Now, when I got to school the next day, Gary and John, they're supposed to be asleep, and told everyone we were moving. That was a time it was not a still small voice that talked to my children when they got home. I mean, when the principal came, well, congratulations, I hear you're moving to Tennessee. I said, huh? You answer the question that God is asking you. Because in the midst of those moments, God wants to know if you're going to hang in there. Peter gets the infamous one, doesn't he, in John 21, do you love me? Jesus saying, love me is in the love that I have for you. Peter says, I love you as a friend. And Jesus isn't happy. By the way, Jesus makes a point, if you look at that chapter real close, they're out fishing. Guess who had fish on the shore to eat for breakfast? Peter caught that in a hurry. You want fish? I can handle fish. Peter had to answer the question. Now, we really don't know Peter's answer until Acts. Because it leaves you kind of, John, it kind of leaves it open. I always think that sometimes God loves a personality. He kind of thinks, Peter, I'm not going to make you look good until Acts, Answer the question next. Start moving. God always wants us to move forward. So he says to Elijah, I need you to go visit this young man named Elisha. Because he's going to be with you. You're not alone anymore. You spent 3 years by yourself. Not anymore. You got a friend. You got someone you're going to mentor. And someone who is just as strong in the faith as you are. I just need him to learn. This is how good a teacher Elijah was. Elisha will do double the miracles of Elijah. Where do you think he got it from? Where did he get that great faith? He got it from the man that he may have spent up to 12 years with. Teaching him what to do. One of the things that we don't understand is that how people watch us. When I was coaching John and the guys, I realized when I walked in the elementary kids who play basketball, they weren't Michael Jordan, who was a player of the day. They were Jonathan. They were Gary. They were Jeremy. That's who they wanted to be. And it hit me one day that the boys looked up to those guys as superstars. They got to wear a uniform. We went to watch them on Friday night play basketball. So after practice one day, I said, guys, I want you to start going around the playground, and I want you to play with the kids. I want you to make friends. One day I walked out there, and they had jerseys made where they were them. See, you don't know who's wanting to wear your jersey because you're there. Next slide. The wind of words. Words are so important. Someone said, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words would never hurt me. That person's a liar. I just tried out at Pekin, Illinois. I'm going to be their pastor at the end of the month. I'm moving. I was telling them the story that I came to Ivy Heights as a busking. And I will admit that I didn't want to be there. I'm a sophomore in high school. Matter of fact, the first Sunday I go is actually the Sunday after the event with Coach Dorsey. I often thought that Coach Dorsey been hostile and not shown grace and love, would that church experience been different? Because I was feeling very good about myself. I still didn't want to be there. But one of those Sundays, a guy looked at me, really several of us, says, "You guys don't admit to nothing. You're just bus kids." Well, about 16 years later, guess who's the senior pastor? Me! And I'm standing behind the podium there, and I see this gentleman. And a thought comes to my mind that has nothing to do with the Holy Spirit. I think I need to tell a story. Then the Holy Spirit said, "Shut up. Don't you think he's probably embarrassed enough already?" But I didn't forget those words. I also have another set of words in my mind. When I was real little, I talked a lot. And I had a great relationship with my great-grandfather. He died of cancer when I was 4, but we bonded quick. So I would go in and entertain him. And so one day, he'd stand up on my grandmother's stool and says, "Preach me a sermon." My mother described it as long and incoherent, to which he said, "That's like most of yours." But anyway, but I remember the first time when I went to Ohio, I was a senior pastor. I was thinking about my grandfather. And I just said, "God, if it's okay, can you see this?" Words. It was God's words that inspired Elijah. It would also be Elisha's words that would inspire him too. Our words, in conjunction with God's words, can do incredible things in the lives of individuals. So if we understand that part of the wind is the words, Last slide, John. The second wind actually was the wind of God's words. The first wind was impressive. If God sends a wind, it's impressive. I mean, it's knocking things around and it's chipping off parts of the mountain. But the second wind is the words of God. 30 plus years of pastoring have shown me that most people don't handle spiritual failure well. And they carry it way too long. And it affects how we think about us. It stops us from doing things that we would probably do. But instead of like Elijah realizing, I can move on, we're where he is when he's in that cave. I can't be useful. The ability of God to forgive and to give grace is incredible. David is a murderer and an adulterer. And by the end of his life, God reaffirms he's a man after his own heart. Moses killed a man. Joseph is a punk. He really is. If I was his brothers, I'd have sold him too. You know what? He is. He's bragging and got his code. But when he becomes the second most powerful man in the world, he's not that brash kid. He's the wisest man on the planet. And the gods. Second wind. God is telling you, I love you. I created you for a purpose. And if you made a mistake, give forgiveness, move on. Mr. Dorsey did something for me that I'll never forget. When you make a mistake like I did around athletes, you never forget it. I mean, it's just how it is. Athletes are cruel and mean people. I'm telling you. Not one player ever mentioned what happened. Because he told him, you want to play for me, leave Steve alone. You can joke about a lot of things. That's off limits. Because he obviously knew if I was going to quit over it, it was a deep hurt. It wasn't just a little thing. God doesn't talk about your mistakes anymore. He doesn't. Once forgiven, it's done. Why don't we help each other not talk about mistakes anymore? Instead, we want to become encouragers, because that's what God was that night, that afternoon. That's what Elisha was. And the world changed, because when these two men were together, it was the most powerful force the world had seen since creation. This morning, accept the second wind of God's word, God's grace, and God's love. Let's stand and pray. Father, we live in a world that's tough and it's hateful. The shootings just tell us how hateful it is today. But Father, it's a cruel world. People love to remember where we failed. They'll write best-selling books about it. And because it's so much of our culture, it creeps up into the church sometimes. And Father, we ask that we would be better about forgiveness and grace and encouragement and leading than reminders of failure. But Father, help us to see today that whether the mistake is real or perceived, that you love us and you're not through with us. And let's not let Satan win, because God is the God of the resurrection, the God of the new creation, and the God of making things totally new. So let us accept that in our lives. In Jesus' name, amen.